2024 has been an interesting year for me in terms of productivity and note taking. It's been transformative in many ways. And so in this video, I want to do a little bit of reflecting with you on what this has looked like for me and what it's meant. Now, what this video isn't is a tutorial or a teaching video where I'm walking you through something. This is a video where I'm taking some time to just reflect with you openly about how I've approached productivity before. If you've followed along with any of the work that I've done over the last 3 or 4 years, this is akin to the podcast that I used to have called Process, where I would walk you through my thought processes and how I'm tackling and thinking about different productivity subjects, approaches, and tools. And if you like this format, let me know because I might bring it back in a video podcast form here on the channel. Calendaring has been my number one productivity item over the last year. I work in a corporate job. I have a busy life with 3 kids and a family, and I basically live and die by my calendar. If it's not on my calendar during the workday, it basically doesn't exist in some regards. And that includes deep work blocks. So it's not just meetings where I have a lot of meetings, but I'm trying to intentionally more so now block off times for deep work in my calendar. And this really helps me. And it's not just times for deep work, but it's what am I doing in that time block in particular that I'm advancing forward. Having direction over my time is absolutely critical. And it's really easy to get caught in the mindset of, well, just let other people kind of put stuff on my calendar and just do whatever kind of flows through. There's really 2 ways that you can think about managing your calendar, and it's reactively to whatever the immediate needs are, or proactively, which is how can I schedule my time so that I can get the most out of what I am intentionally trying to do, whether it's in work or life or with family. Having a proactive mindset is hard because you can't always foresee everything that comes up, but if you can proactively plan to some degree, and at least have an idea of what you want to move the needle forward on in the day, it really, really helps. And I've kind of gotten caught in this loop sometimes of getting into a reactive mindset versus a proactive mindset. And I'm trying to realign myself into the proactive mindset by focusing on my calendar. Probably the crux of it all is note taking. I have some developing thoughts on this because traditionally I have taken this stance that notes are your reference materials, akin to how David Allen tends to think of them in getting things done. It's not the place where you do work, but it's the place where the information that you need to do the work resides. David Allen really separates out the action items from the notes, and this is a mindset that I have had to undo a bit over the last few years. I've made some allusions to this over time. But the truth is that I've realized that the type of work that I have done over the last few years has changed. So earlier on in my career, it was more about being a task doer. I just need to create the list, have the information at hand that I need in order to get the tasks done and move the needle forward on the things. There is still an element of that is true. But what I've realized is that I've grown on in my career is that it's not just about execution, but it's about strategic alignment and making clarity. Making clarity is a tough thing to do because it requires more thought and more processing than it does action. Yes, it involves capturing meeting notes and having conversations with people, setting up times. Yes, it involves doing things. But the work that goes into it, the majority of the work, let me clarify there, is in the thought process. Ideating, planning, considering, what are the options, and so forth. And this has been a big shift for me because I have been one, as I mentioned earlier, that gets kind of trapped in a reactive mindset. And so when you're trying to plan and be strategic, that's not reactive. You can't be reactively strategic. It just doesn't work that way because strategy is all about anticipating the future and how you're going to execute on things going forward. But what I began to realize is that I don't need some sort of complex system for managing all of these things. I need some buckets to put stuff, and I need some ways to get a sense of what are the big projects that I have on my plate? What's the information that I need? I just need to be able to go into one spot, capture all the tasks and the information, all the meeting notes, all the thought processes and brainstorms and ideation sessions that I've been through, and put it in one place so that I know where everything is at. And when I'm working on that project, I have one context that I'm in. I'm not trying to switch from OneNote into Microsoft To Do or a task system in paper, such as the bullet journal. I'm not shifting between a digital context and a physical context. I need one place where this information resides so that when I pick up that project, I have everything I need to move forward. And so this is where note taking and task management has taken a bit of a change for me. Tackling task management first, I think, is maybe more appropriate as we're talking this out in this video. But I am not using a traditional task manager at all. I actually haven't been for quite a while. I've been back and forth with using Todoist. I do think Todoist is still the best task manager for most people. If you haven't seen that video, you can check it out over here. But I have been approaching task management very differently. There's an executive coach named Patty Azzarello. She's got a great book called Rise. So if you're in a corporate career, on more of a corporate career track, that is an excellent book to check out that gives you some tips, not just for handling productivity in an organization, but also how you grow your career in many ways. And one thing that she talks about in this book, as far as productivity concepts are concerned, is that you need to have what she considers a ruthless priority. It's one big thing that you're tackling right now that you are not going to put at risk because there's other things demanding of your time. That's the one thing that if push comes to shove, that's the one thing you're going to make sure gets done. But then secondarily, she talks about needing something called a catch list. Your catch list is basically your to-do list. It's the items that come on your plate, and you just have a list of all of those things. And this is influencing the way that I have been thinking about productivity, because traditionally I've been all in on getting things done, but many of these worlds are starting to blend together now as I've kind of shifted in my career phase, so to say. And so how this is playing out in the notes and task management world is that I'm taking some cues from Patty Azzarello and the bullet journal method and combining them together into a OneNote notebook. So for example, in OneNote, I have a notebook labeled projects. And in that notebook, I have a section for each major project, but I also have a section for action items. And this is where the bullet journal influence and Patty Azzarello's influence comes in as well. The action section is where I'm doing all of my planning, and I do basically a rolling list every single week. And so I have a list of current projects that are my top priority. I have a list of action items that I'm aiming to complete this week. And I have a list of future items that I'm going to keep track of that I may pull into a weekly list at some point. And so I have a note that just has all of those things where I'm capturing all of those things in real time. And then week to week, I'm just copying that note, making adjustments to it so that it's accurately reflecting what I need to get done in that week. I'll add items to it. I'll plan on a Friday what I want to get done into the next week. And this seems to be working pretty well. It's making sure that I have the big picture in sight, which is the thing that I've struggled the most doing with the traditional task management methodology, which is what are all the channels of work that I need to push forward from a high level, and how do I spend my time planning those out? Then at the tactical level is what's just a list of things that I need to get done this week, because daily planning typically doesn't work for me. It's just a little too granular. And so this is impacting my note-taking and task management setup because I have it all combined into one place. And so that alludes to how has this impacted my overall viewpoint and my note-taking experience. At work, I've been limited to OneNote basically from the beginning. And so that's just the reality of where things live. Over the past year, I've noticed that my usage of Obsidian for other things has diminished, and I think there's a big piece of this. I'm not sitting on my personal computer all day long. I used to be on my computer, which was the computer I did work and personal stuff off of at the previous job that I had. And so it was easy for me to use a tool like Obsidian as my day in and day out note taking app. That being said, now that I'm in more of this mixed environment where my personal stuff is more on my mobile devices, my iPhone and my iPad, and I've found myself gravitating towards apps that are just easier to use natively on that platform. Obsidian's app is super powerful on iOS, but I have found that it doesn't necessarily meet my needs to be quickly accessible and easily used, I guess, for lack of a better word, on an iOS device. And so that's found me experimenting with using Apple Notes. I've been doing this for a couple of months now as my primary note-taking app of choice. And when I say note-taking app, I mean little snippets of things that I want to keep track of and capture, and journaling and taking notes on different things in different places, and then organizing that in a way that is easily retrievable. So I'm taking the same methodology that I'm using for productivity and applying that to Apple Notes as well for things in my personal life and in my side business. But then I'm supplementing that with Obsidian. Obsidian is really what I would consider that deep thought workspace. If I really want to press into an idea where I'm learning something more deeply, I'll still probably capture the majority of those notes over in Obsidian. I know this is probably a big change because I've been such a huge proponent of Obsidian for the last 4 or 5 years. And I still really am. I think it's the most powerful note-taking app out there on the market, especially if you're more of a generalist and you're trying to bridge thoughts across different categories of information or areas that you're learning in. It is one of the most powerful tools for doing that. But from a day-to-day practical perspective, if I just want to jot down some notes or capture a link that I want to come back to later, or get a gift idea or put a list together, something like that, Apple Notes has just really fit that need for me. I don't need anything super complicated, I am finding. And really that's the theme of 2024. As I look back on how I've tackled productivity, it's been uncomplicating things. I talked about in another video my hybrid productivity setup, and in some ways, I've given up on that. But there still is a place for paper in my life. It's just that digital is becoming the primary hub again, because I'm finding the way in an uncomplicated fashion that it all fits together. If I leave you with one thing in this video, I want you to understand this, is that there are tons of systems out there, and these systems are beneficial in different seasons. Getting things done was really good for me in seasons where I had a lot of tactical, fidgety little tasks that I needed to do in my life, and I don't have as many of those anymore. I was also finding that as the number of responsibilities had increased on my plate, managing all of the little details in these apps actually got to be quite overwhelming. And so I'm focused more now on managing the big picture. And if you're in a similar spot to me, I would advise you to just take a step back and try to uncomplicate your systems in a way that makes sense for you. Because if you can manage the big picture, it gets a heck of a lot easier to manage the details. You don't have to capture every little tiny detail. You don't have to plan out every little task that's down to, a granular item, and you don't have to create atomic notes for everything. But you can do those things in the areas of your life that are the most important. And so that is my parting thought in this video. Again, it's a bit of a ramble, but I wanted to give you a picture into some of my thought processes around productivity and how things are changing. And again, if you like this format, it's a little bit more honest, it's a little less teaching, but a little bit more of a glimpse into my thought processes, do let me know in the comments below, because I'm considering bringing something like this back. in a video podcast format for 2025. My name is Justin with Effective. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay effective.